Hi everyone, we hope you're doing good in this quite strange time. We know it's a bit weird for people in the film, TV and broadcast industries at the moment. So this is the first of our Superwomen sessions.
So in these sessions, we'll be checking in with industry professionals from all different paths in the industry. We'll be looking for advice from them on navigating this weird time. And we'll also be looking for tips on what to do when things pick back up again and work resumes as normal.
So we're joined today by Natalie, who is Head of Talent at one of the UK's biggest production companies, Newtopia. Hi Natalie, how are you doing?
Natalie? I'm all right. Yeah, I'm doing okay.
What's your isolation setup like?
Well, it's okay. I'm in London and I'm lucky enough to have a space that is big enough to house myself, my husband, and my teenage girls. Day one of myself and my husband working from home, we both went into our usual study area, and within 10 minutes, I thought I was going to absolutely strangle him. So I had to leave and set up somewhere else in the house. Thought if the marriage is going to survive isolation, we cannot be working in the same room for the next 12 weeks. Not going to happen. So, so no, it's okay. Now I think we're lucky enough to all four of us have separate spaces in the house that we can retreat to. So I think that is keeping us all sane.
Yeah, important. It sounds like this, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So Natalie, I wonder if you could just start by giving us a bit of introduction to who you are and what you do.
So as you said, I'm the head of talent at a production company called Newtopia. As head of talent, essentially, it's my job to bring creative talent, so directors, producers, and so on, to the company. My focus is more of the senior talent, so sort of the big name directors and executive producers, and I work with another woman, fantastic woman, Naoma, who looks after all of our researchers and assistant producers and runs our brilliant work experience program that we run. So I'm always, both of us are always on the lookout for fantastic people to bring into the company.
And can you tell us a bit about sort of the commissions, recent credits and programs that Newtopia have been working on?
Of course, it's interesting. Newtopia was founded and is owned by a woman called Jane Root, who was a long time ago the first woman controller of a BBC TV channel, which is rather amazing. She ran BBC Two, and she ran it during a real golden age for the BBC under her stewardship. It was the start of Jamie Oliver's first shows, Top Gear, Who Do You Think You Are, The Office. So, she is responsible for bringing us all Ricky Gervais. Isn't that marvellous? But Jane, after she left BBC Two, took a very big job in America to run the Discovery networks. And when she finished her tenure there, she decided that she wanted to stay in America, but wanted to set up a company in the UK to make TV shows for American TV networks, because she felt like there was a real gap in the market for brilliant factual programming for American TV networks that American production talent didn't have the skill to do. So the focus of Newtopia in its 12 years of life has been mostly making TV shows for American TV networks, increasingly now for the global streamers like Netflix and Amazon, and Disney Plus actually is one of our newest buyers. And the shows that we focus on as a company are very big, ambitious, factual programs, very often with a big Hollywood A-lister as our sort of host front and center. So we have a big series called One Strange Rock, which is a big natural history and science series, which is hosted by Will Smith. We have a series on Disney Plus called The World According to Jeff Goldblum, which is pretty much, as you'd imagine, it's Jeff in his own idiosyncratic way, exploring fairly sort of day-to-day things and why we love them, like sneakers and coffee and swimming pools and tattoos. And we have another show that's in production at the moment with Chris Hemsworth, so that's quite exciting, who is our human guinea pig. We are spending a year with him, getting him to train for various stunts and challenges to see if we can make him fitter, stronger, smarter, sort of make him into a kind of real life superhero, I guess. It's sort of, behind it, there's some really kind of solid science about longevity, which is a very sort of zeitgeisty subject, but we're lucky enough to have a superhero to test all these theories out on.
A real life Hollywood superhero.
Exactly, it's very exciting.
That sounds amazing.
So that's, I mean, there's also another kind of arm to what we do, which is drama documentary, I should say. That's the other sort of area that we cover. We've got a series that's on Netflix at the moment called The Last Tsars, which is a big factual drama about the end of the Romanov dynasty in Russia before the revolution, which has done very well on Netflix, actually. They're very pleased with it. Other shows on Netflix I can tell you about. There's a big series on babies, which is currently out. So if anybody's looking for something just ridiculously cute, but with quite a lot of interesting science in it, a good distraction from Corona, I feel. Go and watch 12 hours of very cute babies. We're sort of following babies all over the world for the first 12 months of life and looking at the kind of science behind baby development, what's going on in their brains in that first year.
Sounds like you've got loads going on.
Yeah.
That's great. And so what was your kind of path to becoming head of talent at Newtopia?
Well, actually, like quite a lot of other people who do my job at various production companies, I started in as a creative myself. I was a program maker for a long time. I mean, actually, I should say my very first job was as a radio reporter, making little science packages for the World Service and for Radio 5, I think, and maybe Radio 4. I can't remember. It was a very long time ago. Anyway, so yes, I had a long time as someone who was interested in making programs myself, and I worked for lots of different production companies, mostly making science and natural history shows. I did a stint at Discovery as a commissioner for the Animal Planet channel, and then about 8 or 9 years ago, I made the move into talent. A lot of women that I knew had decided that they were going to take a sideways step into talent. I think because they wanted to keep involved with TV, but with families, it's a bit more challenging how you do that. And I think the nice thing about this job is that you still have your eye in, you're still very involved. Certainly I'm very involved in all of the productions, and there's quite a high level of art to creating the perfect production team, and you have to have a very good sort of program maker's understanding of each show to understand the right kind of people to populate it with. So it's a nice way of using your skills, but it's a bit more family friendly, I would say. That's essentially my journey. I spent about 10 years at the BBC, lots of indies and Discovery, essentially.
What's the role kind of day by day, and also what attributes and skills do you need to have to be a head of talent?
The role day by day, well, I think probably like most roles within TV, I would say no 2 days and no 2 weeks were ever the same. And that's quite a lot of the reason I think a lot of people were attracted to it in the first place. I don't know about you, Alice, but certainly for me, it was because I really wanted variety. The idea of doing something that was quite repetitious and sort of sitting behind a desk never ever appealed to me. But I would say in an average week, my time is probably split between meeting new and interesting creative people speculatively and trying to get to know them, helping them understand what we do as a company, work out what their skills and interests are, and thinking about how they might be helpful in the future. Quite often that is quite a kind of, a long-term relationship. You know, quite often I'll meet people and actually it won't be until 18 months later that there's the perfect job for them. But it's really, really important to do these speculative things. You know, I track very closely and carefully who's winning awards, what the kind of hot shows are, and always try and meet those kind of creative people. So that's every week. I would say I'm, you know, a good portion of my day is spent by meeting new and interesting people, and then the rest of the time it's thinking in the here and now how we're going to populate the shows that are about to be commissioned at the company or have been commissioned, and it's also thinking about who have we got at the company and how are they doing, what might we want to move them on to, how do we want to train them, what new skills can we help them acquire so that we're growing them from within the company. So staff training is really important. We are very dedicated to staff retention and training people up and giving them opportunities. Most of the time, we do that in a relatively informal way, as opposed to sending people on formal training schemes. We try and figure out within productions where the opportunities are and help people just acquire new skills when we can. So we're very lucky because many of our series take 2 to 3 years to make, which means that there are opportunities within that time to grow people's skills.
Yeah, I was going to just say that it's lots of people skills and keeping relationships going and nurturing relationships.
Yes. Well, I mean, in terms of you asked me what you felt the skills I need to have are, and you're absolutely right. It's a very, very people-centered role, and I think you have to have quite a high EQ to do it well, because as I said, putting a team of people together is an incredibly complex thing, because it's not just about the credit someone's got on their CV. It's all about how you can see people interacting and what their actual personalities are like and whether they're going to work together as a group. It's never about a single person, it's always about a group. And you know, you also have to think quite creatively, because particularly with our very big ambitious shows, it's very unusual that we will be hiring someone who's done something incredibly similar and therefore we're sure they can do the job. We're quite often thinking, well, not so much what are the credits on their CV, but what are the skills they've acquired through doing the various different kinds of jobs that they've done. How many boxes does that tick in terms of what we need and what's missing, and therefore what other kind of person do we need to put that first person with in order to make a whole entity. It's a complex thing. So lots of lateral thinking, high EQ. Yeah, I sometimes feel like the company mum or company therapist, I would say.
That's great. And so how do you find talent? And I guess more kind of, obviously you're looking, you know, as you mentioned, you know, looking at what directors have done specifically, but especially with the kind of more entry level, like, is it job sites? Is it word of mouth?
It's a real combination of things. I would say for the more junior talent, actually we got a pretty high conversion rate from our work experience program to junior roles. We've got a very structured work experience program. We're quite selective about who we bring on board, and we really put those people through their paces and invest quite a lot of time in them, because we are expecting and wanting to be able to give them jobs when we can at the end of it. Maybe not straight away, but you know, those are our next generation essentially. And I mean, those people come to us. We have relationships with a number of universities and colleges and film schools, both here and actually in America as well. We get, I think it's Yale. I think Yale sends someone over for a few months every summer to us. So that is one way. And then in terms of the other sort of more entry-level positions, people write to us and we read every email. and look at every CV. I can promise you, even if you think that your email and CV goes into a kind of abyss and gets ignored, even if people don't reply, they definitely all get read. So keep sending your CVs and your emails in. And then other than that, it's a combination of advertising on job sites and also, as you say, word of mouth, just friends recommending, other people at the company recommending people. Yeah, a whole combination of things, and always looking at the TV shows that have been on that might be relevant and looking at who made them.
I think anyone that works in TV, broadcasting, film, when you're starting out, you've got to be quite hungry and driven and determined because it's quite a tough industry. Have you got any advice for those people that are in that position on how they can stand out more to people like you?
That's a very interesting question. I think that, okay, as you can imagine, I get sent many, many emails and CVs every single week. Many, many, many. And the ones that stand out to me are the ones where I feel like the people writing to me have done their homework. They are not just sending a form standard email, which they have sent to basically every production company they can think of. They, without really thinking about, well, what is this production company making? How am I and my skills relevant to that production company? What is it that I think I would like to do at that company? So I would say the way to stand out in general, I know is to do your homework, frankly, and think about who you're writing to. I think it's really important. I think your hit rate of getting someone to write back to you or coming in for a chat or any of those things that we all want, it's all about understanding who you are writing to, and being clear about what it is you want. I think it's really important. I would give one caveat to that, which is just a nice personal story, which will make you smile. Which is about I don't know, about 6 weeks ago, around the time when the Baby series dropped on Netflix. I got a letter through the post at work, and it was in a silver envelope, which definitely made it quite exciting. So I did assume that was probably not going to be an exciting piece of post, but I was still, I thought, oh, someone's been really smart. They put their letter in a silver envelope. That's great. Well done them. Anyway, I opened it up, and inside was this very beautiful handwritten letter on kind of school lined paper, which, I hadn't seen for a very, very long time. And it was a young man who had seen the Baby series and had just fallen in love with it and just wanted to write and tell us all about it. And it was such a beautiful letter that actually we, even though he didn't particularly have relevant experience to the company, I actually said to my colleague, I think you should meet him because he's just made such a big effort and he clearly has demonstrated his passion for what we've made. So I'd love you to meet him, and he's the most delightful person, and I hope that we find the right job for him.
So that's what it is. You think it's having that kind of showing that passion, but also showing that passion for the company and their work.
I think that's exactly right. I think really understanding what that company makes, whatever it is, I think is really, really important, and much overlooked. And actually, it's surprising. I do even get form emails from series producers, whose skill set and CV may be brilliant, but is utterly irrelevant to a company like Utopia, because what they make is just poles apart from what we do. And I just think, you're a series producer, you should know better. You really should know better than to do that. But definitely, I think it's, I think it's a key thing. And I would also say, don't write a covering letter that's too long, because it won't get read in detail.
Good advice. And it's obviously, highly, highly competitive at every level of the industry, but especially when you're starting out. And when you get that CV, what kind of, especially someone who maybe hasn't had the opportunity to get much experience in TV, what other experience are you looking for? And then when you meet the person, what kind of personality traits, are you looking for?
Um, if someone hasn't had masses of experience and therefore doesn't have a whole load of credits on their CV, I think the things that are going to make them stand out are probably their additional skills. So I always say to people when they're starting out, you know, think hard about what else it is that you can offer. Is it another language? Is it you can drive? You know, because actually lots of young people don't bother to learn to drive, and I would say, my goodness me, if you're going to spend any money on your own training, learn to drive. Definitely learn to drive. It's a really good skill to have. You know, it will open many more doors in terms of, you know, entry level roles, I think. So yes, learning, can you drive? What cameras can you operate? Can you edit? Trying to think what else. I think for a company like Newtopia, which is a specialist factual company, and therefore, you know, our entry level positions are mostly research positions, and they will be for positions where you're looking into kind of science subjects or history subjects or arts and culture subjects. I'd want to see if you had a particular interest in something within science or history, or you had knowledge that was particularly useful. I think that, you know, occasionally, for example, on the Jeff Goldblum show, we have people who are more casting, I've described them as casting producers, who are going out and finding people for Jeff Goldblum to meet. So I think if you're interested in that route, I'd want to see that you have experience of something that involves really good interpersonal skills and communication. So whether it's working in a shop or a bar, something like that, working on a reception desk is you know, really helpful. It's a really invaluable skill to have.
And it seems like you have quite a lot of sway. If you meet someone and you really get a rapport with someone, or you like what you see, it seems like you have some sway to kind of move the process along. Who has the ultimate hiring decision making? Is that you, or is that, you know, a group of you? How does it work?
Ultimately, it's the person who is going to be the line manager of that person on the project, but it is normally a collaborative decision. And, you know, I myself get fairly involved in who we hire, and although it's never my decision, I definitely want to encourage the right decision for sure. So yeah, it's collaborative, but you know, it's one of those interesting things that I think that you get a slightly different perspective when you do my kind of job. And also, I've probably met many more people than the executive producer or the series producer or the director has. So I suppose I have a different kind of perspective to them.
Yeah, it sort of helps, doesn't it, when other people bring up someone's name and then it sort of corroborates, oh yeah, you know, that they might be a good fit for it, you know, more than one person is saying so.
I think that's right. And I think also I have a sense of what I think the dynamic is ultimately going to be, and maybe I can see that, whereas they can't.
Interesting. And I guess having met so many people, you must almost have this kind of like intuition about who's going to work. Like it's probably not even a conscious process for you now at this point. But are there things that people can do when they're coming for an interview to like help prepare themselves in the way that they present themselves, you know, in how they speak and dress and behave?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I would say, specifically for Newtopia, I would say that the kinds of people who work best at the company are people who are smart, you know, interested in academic things, but highly creative. So they're not kind of nerdishly Open University geekishly smart, but they are clever and they like clever ideas and they like clever conceptual thinking. So for us, I think that at any level, we're interested in people who want to have that kind of level of conversation. But in general, I would say that, they're obvious things, really. I think, even if you're feeling shy, try and make good eye contact. Make sure you've done your homework. Make sure you've seen one or two of the shows that the company's made. We live in a world of the come in for a chat. Things are incredibly informal within TV. And, quite often I've been in situations and I've heard of situations where people come in and they don't really even realise that what it is a job interview for a particular job. They think they're just in for a chat. I think there's quite a sort of blurring of the lines. So I would say if someone invites you in for a chat, I would say get some clarity before you come in about whether it is just a casual chat or whether actually it's for a specific job, a specific role. Find out as much as you can. Absolutely do your homework about why you're coming in. And make sure you've seen some programs that the company has made. And I know this, again, is a really obvious one, but, quite often, especially when I'm meeting people who are a bit, earlier on in their career and they might be a little bit nervous, I will ask them to just some very straightforward things about, well, what do you like to watch on TV? It is unbelievable how many people say, oh, I don't know, or, oh, I don't know whether I really watch TV. And, you've got to love telly if you work in it. So I would say always think about what you've been watching in the last week or so that you've got something to talk about. Really important.
Definitely. The amount of times I've been asked, so what new music are you listening to? And it's like, you've got to have the ones stored close.
You do. Because you always know afterwards, don't you? You've got 25 things to say afterwards.
Exactly. So you don't freeze in the moment just because
exactly.
Expect those questions.
Yeah.
So like in terms of qualifications, for example, I did English and drama joint honours degree, but didn't do a journalism course, but then found myself in music journalism and just kind of learnt on the job. Do you think it's important that people have done, a film school qualification or some TV course or anything? What kind of qualifications are you looking for?
I would say at Newtopia specifically, no, absolutely not. And in fact, it is to do with what we make specifically, but I would much rather people just did a degree in something that they loved, whether it's English or history or biochemistry or Spanish, doesn't really matter. I think for our specific kinds of programs, I think that just doing a degree in something you love is going to teach you a huge amount about research, about understanding, technical research papers and books, and how to talk to academics and how to write and how to analyze and how to communicate. And those are the things that are important. I think that is different if you are passionate about something a bit more technical, like wanting to be an editor or wanting to be a camera operator or a sound recordist. I think in those situations, I think going and doing something a bit more technical, going to a film school, fantastic, absolutely go and do it. But there's really no need to do some kind of media studies degree at all. I mean, some people do a sort of English degree or a geography degree or whatever it is they want, and then they go on and do a year's sort of journalism course. That's quite interesting. That is quite interesting because I think that understanding journalism is really important. Understanding how to interview people, understanding, journalistic rigor. That's a really, really important skill. How to know when you're really telling people the facts. That is really important. So that's
how to not libel anyone.
Exactly.
Like the legal side of it as well.
Exactly. But definitely you don't need to do a media studies degree at all. Not unless you want to. If you want to, great. But I would say I'd rather see people who've got a degree in something that they really love.
I remember starting out, and one of the the things that I found myself doing all the time was just speaking to people on the phone. And as you say, like very, you know, from all walks of life. It could be an academic, and it could be, you know, someone of the family of a murder victim, you know. So I guess it's about having that interpersonal skill and really building that up. Would you say, I don't know, if someone wanted to build that as a skill, like maybe creating their own content and creating short interviews themselves might be a good way of going about that?
Yeah, I think that particularly when you're talking about documentaries that are access driven, if you can demonstrate that you've managed to get access to something or someone that's really interesting, I think that's a brilliant thing to do. Absolutely.
And does it help if people have made their own films, even if that's like a music video or, I don't know, a little promo film? Is that something you look for?
Not necessarily. I think I'll always be interested to see it. Depends what somebody wants to do, if that makes sense. Because I think that what's it going to tell me? I suppose if someone is wanting an entry level position, they're not going to be. We're not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to offer anybody a job directing something straight up if they're straight out of, you know, college, but they've made some music videos on the side. Not, again, I'm caveating this all with, in terms of what happens at Newtopia. I think every company and what they make is different, and so they're going to have different requirements. So what it won't help that person with is thinking that I'm going to say, oh my God, this person's an amazing director. I will immediately give them a 1 hour documentary in my new baby series. What I suppose it will tell me is that this person has creative potential, and that they have some understanding about what happens on a shoot, and therefore they could be quite useful on location because they're not going to be learning from scratch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, you know, other companies where they make series that require a lot of people to be operating cameras and filming observationally for, you know, days and weeks at a time, I think they might think differently. You know, they might think that's incredibly valuable, that somebody can jump straight in and be shooting straight away. But again, it's useful, but I would say possibly at those companies they'll be thinking, but do they have the sort of story experience to be able to match their shooting ability or their creative ability with working out what is the story they're filming? So there still may be some gaps in their knowledge.
So really, I guess it's about if you know what your end goal is and where you want to be, kind of creating content that is aligned with that. So if it is, you know, telling stories, that maybe doing something a bit more journalistic, even if that isn't filmmaking, maybe it's writing or.
Yep, I think that's absolutely right.
Great.
And once you're in, have you got any tips for progressing through once you're, you know, you've got your foot in the door and you're in? Tips for then getting up the ladder a little bit, do's and don'ts and things.
Well, I think I would say a few things. I would say if you feel like you are at a company that feels like home, in other words, they're making the kind of content that really plays to your strengths and you really love what's being produced, then and you're having a good time there, then I think try and make real friends with the people at that company, particularly your line managers, your series producers, your executive producers. Have some people who are going to champion you. And as I say, at Newtopia, you know, when we find people that really enjoy what we do, seem to get a lot out of what we're making and really contribute, we absolutely want to hold on to them and look after them and give them opportunities to grow. So I think, you know, find your home, I think, is a really good tip. And you may not find your home straight away. You know, you may find that you're doing stints at 4, 8, 12 different production companies on lots of different kinds of programs before you work out what is really making you happy and where you really feel like this is it, this is what I want to do, and these are the people that I'm really connecting with. But once you've found your home, and most people do, I think most people have 3 or 4 production companies that really feel like they're a fit for them, and there are people there that sort of understand them and appreciate what they can offer. So find your home. I think the other thing I always say to people at whatever level of their career that they are at is, if you are finding it really hard to get to that next stage, it's really good to go and identify series that are returning. So they're, I don't know, Gogglebox or 24 Hours in A&E, or I mean, Alice, you've spent lots of time, you said at October Films, they do endless series for Discovery ID, sort of murder series, don't they? Endless.
Doing one now.
Always things going on. And they, anything that is returning, they will have very efficient systems set up, and the company will know exactly what they're doing, which means that they are able to take risks, or more risks anyway, with people. So, you quite often find, I see this a lot, for example, 24 Hours in A&E, people who started there as researchers, end up series producing it, because it's a very safe place to take your next leap, because you've worked on it before, but even if you haven't, the structures and the systems in place are so well set and so organized that it's a great place for someone to take a chance. And I think also the reality is that when we've got to series 25 of 24 Hours in A&E, no bit high-end director is ever going to want to come in and direct it. They've moved on a long time ago. So in terms of who people like me can hire to populate those kinds of shows, you are looking at different kinds of people. You're not going to get your big name directors or your big name producers to do them necessarily. As I say, they will have moved on. So find your home and look for some returning series where people are more able to take risks.
That's really good advice. And yeah, like you say, it does take a while to figure out exactly what kind of TV you want to make. You kind of have to try a few things out. You're not going to know straight out of university exactly what kind of programming is going to suit you. And that takes time.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And don't worry about it either. And also don't worry about looking like you've got a bit of a mixture of things on your CV. Again, quite a lot of people are quite apologetic when they come and see me and say things like, oh, I bet my CV looks a bit weird because I've got, I've done Hunted, but I've also done a Bake Off, or and then I did a drama doc, and doesn't it look a bit weird? And actually for me, I utterly embrace that, because I just think that what that tells me is you are just acquiring the most fantastic range of skills. I would caveat it with saying that I do appreciate that, particularly within UK broadcasters, it can be tricky, because if it's a cooking show at 9 o'clock for Channel 4, then quite possibly, they're looking for people who've got lots of 9 o'clock cooking shows for Channel 4. So I do appreciate that. But I think that, we at Newtopia are much more focused on the likes of Netflix and Amazon and Disney. And I think the rules are a bit different there. And so I hope that will be increasingly the case for young people who are making their way in the TV industry, that 5 years from now, there'll be a different set of requirements and people will worry less about having a mixed ecology on their CV. I personally think it's great, because it just tells me that people are versatile and have fantastic range of skills.
And what are your kind of top do's and don'ts for CV writing?
Don't make it too fussy. Make it really clear. I say this a lot, and it's hard to hear, but it's true. I would say that for the most part, when I look at a CV, and I know I'm not alone, you've probably got about 5 seconds to tell me who you are and what you do. And obviously, I do then read CVs in a bit more detail. But if you can't communicate with the way that you present yourself in a CV within about 5 or 10 seconds what kind of person you are, you may have lost me and I may be on to the next one. So I think clarity is incredibly important. Make sure that right at the top of your CV is who you are and what job you want to be doing or you are doing. And then maybe a few bullet points about your key skills, and then straight into your credits or your work experience, whatever that might be. But just make it really, really clear. I would also say avoid prose where you can. Just make it incredibly easy to read. I think if you keep in your mind that people are going to spend a very small amount of time looking at your CV in the first instance before they decide whether to take a deeper dive, I think just keep that in your head when you're writing it. And don't put any photos of yourself either. No photos.
No photos. Okay, got it. And what about any kind of color about, who you are? And because sometimes CVs can feel pretty dry, can't they? And they don't really represent the person. How do you kind of convey that? And is it important to?
Definitely important. Definitely. I think that most people at the bottom of their CV will have a kind of additional information little paragraph. And on that, if you are a passionate traveler, or you like to DJ at the weekends, and you have an obsession with kind of rare 90s hip hop, or you speak a very obscure Ukrainian dialect, or you've read every single Austen novel 25,000 times, whatever it is, I absolutely want to see it. Absolutely want to see it. So just put it at the bottom of your CV as additional skills or interests. Quite often people make me laugh when they write those bits, and that's great.
So we're in this period of isolation and lockdown, which is quite weird. I went to a freelance seminar years ago, and there was a whole thing about because I freelance and I always have, and I do a lot of different jobs, and this thing of kind of when you're not working, the people around you will be like, oh, you're not working this week, kind of thing. And their advice was to always just say that you're in development. So this is kind of like 3 months or 2 months or however long it's going to be, where we're all in development in a way. And obviously there'll be a lot of things happening at the company that are developing shows for when we're out the other side, and developing shows for even for now in this period of time. So what can people be doing now to further their career?
Well, I would say there's several things. I think you can definitely keep yourself busy. I would say be thinking of ideas of your own all the time. Maybe get together virtually with a group of like-minded individuals and brainstorm ideas together. I think I saw something on one of the TV Facebook groups quite recently where someone was actually suggesting that they did that they formed some kind of collective, so you weren't doing it in a bubble, but you were sort of brainstorming ideas together, which I think is a brilliant idea. So keep reading all the time, keep watching, keep reading, keep coming up with ideas for sure. Find ways to develop your technical skills. There's a million resources online. There's also the most incredible they've described it as Sheffield and Edinburgh mixed into one. Screen Skills are doing at least 6 weeks, possibly 8 weeks of free training every single day from 9 in the morning till 7 in the evening. Master classes, virtual lunches with commissioners, craft sessions, all sorts of things. People like me, we've got a talent manager takeover every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to talk to people like me. Get yourself onto the Screen Skills website for sure, and have a look at what's available. I believe the tickets, it's all free, but you have to sort of book your spot. They're selling out, as it were, very fast. They're releasing them a week at a time, so you have to be quite on the ball. But I would say the access to the British TV community through this is unprecedented. The most unbelievable people have signed up their time, have volunteered their time on this. So I would say try and do as many of those things as possible. people. And, you know, lots and lots of other organisations and bodies are offering free training and support. So I would say take advantage of all of that. And, you know, we at Newtopia are trying to invent a little camera kit that we can send out to shoot people remotely during this time of lockdown. So be inventive, be an inventor, you know, see if you can attach a camera to a drone and send it out the house and see if you can film that way. I don't know. I'm not a massively technical person, but, you know, invent something amazing that the TV community can use during lockdown to make TV shows.
Yeah, I love that, because you know, on the one hand, it is quite a scary time, but it's also a time of opportunity, isn't it? And if you use it well, then, you know, as you say, that could be an idea for time for developing ideas and building skills. And there's just lots that we could be doing even from home.
One of the simplest things you can do during this time is build your network, because the connectivity that we're all experiencing, I think, is unprecedented. And particularly with events like the Screen Skills Jamboree, you know, your access to people you wouldn't normally have access to is phenomenal, really. You know, you can have lunch with a different commissioner every day of the week from now until July almost, if you really want to. So take advantage of it.
Brilliant, thanks. And have you got any side projects that you're working on, or any just little creative ventures you're working on?
Learning to knit, does that count?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a very good link on YouTube to a sort of idiot's guide to knitting if anyone's interested. But yeah, I think that's my creative side project. You know, I think probably like everybody else, we're sort of slightly suffering from not having the food in the fridge that we always want. So creative cooking also. In terms of TV side projects, not hugely. I mean, I think along with the rest of the company, I think we're just trying to figure out how we can carry on filming and be creative during this time, you know, whatever that means. Definitely.
Is there anything that you've learned about yourself already from COVID?
Well, apart from the fact that I can't be in the same room as my husband for more than 15 minutes when we're both working. Definitely like that. Do you know what? I tell you what's really interesting is that because of the nature of my job, it's very office-based, because it's all about meeting people, and you really, you know, I spend a lot of time looking into the whites of people's eyes and really picking up quite kind of nuanced things about how they're communicating and behaving and how they're reacting and responding. And I always sort of wished that I could do a bit of my job working from home. Oh boy, I miss the office. That's what I've discovered. Actually, the value of being physically in the same space as people in an industry like ours, which is so much about people collaborating and working together. You just, as brilliant as things like Zoom and Skype are, it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same. In fact, I was reading this morning, there's quite a psychologist has written quite an interesting analysis of the difference between doing all of this on Zoom as opposed to doing it in person, and what happens in your brain. Because like a lot of people, I'm finding myself absolutely exhausted from staring so intensely at the screen at the end of every day on Zoom. And apparently it's not unusual for us all to be feeling so tired, because we're having to work so much harder to pick up on the subtleties of human communication. So yes, I think a new appreciation for being in the office, I've definitely learned about myself, for sure. Yeah.
And also, anything that you're watching, you mentioned the programs that Newtopia made that are airing, but is there anything, because we're all in need of some tips at the moment for Netflix and Now TV and Amazon TV and just the telly. What's your favourite thing?
Oh my goodness. God, what am I watching at the moment? Oh God, I'm watching the whole of the American Office series from the beginning, which I'm loving, absolutely loving. Just, it's brilliant. I think don't you find that there's quite a lot of stuff on my list that I'm just not in the mood for watching at the moment? I think, you know, my brain is too sort of fizzy and distracted to deal with anything that's too sort of demanding. So yeah, the American Office is really doing it for me. But actually it's quite interesting watching it, because so many of those actors have gone on to have amazing careers individually since it was out. So that's been great. Everybody's talking about this thing, The Tiger King on Netflix. I haven't seen it yet. Have you guys seen it?
It is,
Yeah,
yeah,
finished it yesterday.
No.
yeah, it's pretty
Bananas.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah, totally bananas and quite horrifying.
Yeah, and the new series of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'm a bit of a sucker for American comedy, I've got to say. So the new series of Curb Your Enthusiasm is making me very happy at the moment, for sure. And what else? God, Home. Have you seen Home? That was on Channel
No.
4. Oh my God, it's brilliant. A little comedy, absolutely brilliant. I don't understand why it hasn't had a bit more of a kind of noisy reception. About the is he from Syria? I think it's about a Syrian refugee who sneaks into the boot of a family's car when they're on holiday in France, and they don't realise until they open their boot to unpack their suitcases when they get back to Kent or wherever they are. Anyway, it's absolutely brilliant, really, really brilliant, bittersweet, so funny, so clever, absolutely fantastic, and nobody seems to be watching it, and it's amazing, really amazing.
Good recommendations. I rewatched The English Office just before Christmas, so I haven't seen The American, so I'm gonna have to do that. That's a good one.
Oh, if you've just seen The English Office, then it'll be interesting for you to see it, because you can definitely, the similarities and differences are quite interesting. You can definitely see who are the same characters, who are the different characters, how Steve Carell is different to Ricky Gervais. He's a much more sort of sympathetic character actually compared to Ricky. Yeah, and there's many seasons, so it'll keep you busy for a while.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Natalie. That was fantastic. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.